Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Bobby Hammz here with my review of Disney Plus's The Mandalorian, Episode 6 and Episode 7. Now, I am glad that I stuck with this show after seeing these two episodes. Actually, after seeing Episode 5 also, I'm really glad that I stuck with this series because it really has bounced back from the horrible rough start that it had with episodes 1 and 2. And you can finally see where that $12.5 million that they spend per episode is actually starting to pay off here. I still think it's overpriced by quite a margin, but you can see that the cinematic quality is really starting to show with these past 3 episodes. So episode 6, let's get right into it, was a prison break. So notice some of the guest stars right off the bat. Mark Boone, he was putting together a team to break Jax Teller out of prison, and he promised DeLorean a big payday in order to help him out. Bill Burr, who I first saw in Breaking Bad as a dramatic person, I think he also showed up in Better Call Saul. Yeah, I think he reprised his role in Better Call Saul. And I only learned he was a comedian after seeing him on Breaking Bad, and I love him as a comedian even more. In this show, he is a sharpshooter, and he's a team leader, and he also has this cool shoulder-mounted gun thing that's part of his attire. And then you got Clancy Brown, legendary actor from Shawshank Redemption and the voice of Lex Luthor on the Superman animated TV series from WB Cartoons, one of my favorite cartoons, along with, of course, Batman, the animated series. He's also the voice of Grodd on the CW Flash, and he is Attorney General Waylon Jock Jeffcoat on Billions with Damian Lewis and Paul Giamatti. Awesome show, by the way. In The Mandalorian, he cosplays as a Hellboy named Burr, B-U-R-G, and I couldn't stop thinking of him as Hellboy in that getup. And there's a Natalia Tena. She's also part of the group, and she used to be Tonks in Harry Potter and Osha in Game of Thrones. Didn't realize that at all. Didn't recognize her, so props to the makeup department for that. And Xi'an is an angry, distant relative of Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z, and she apparently has a bad history with DeLorean. Now, the Dragon Ball Z joke aside, I think I've seen her species, character before in Star Wars. I don't know if it was from Attack of the Clones or from something else, but the getup looked familiar to me. I just don't know where I've seen it before. Ismael Cruz Cordova plays Shin, Xi'an's brother. He's very temperamental, short temper. And then there's Richard Ayoade as the voice of Zero, who is like the mechanical robot thing that joins them. He handles their navigation on the ship. Everything that's automated is what Zero does. And then the X-Wing fighters are actually the directors. I mean, Margaret Chow and Dave Filoni and some other person, I forgot to take their name down, but they show up as X-Wing fighters later on in the episode. I'll get to that shortly. So like I said, the plot of this episode 6 is prison break. Boone has someone he wants to break out of prison, and the prisoner's on this transport ship that DeLorean immediately recognizes as, I believe, an Imperial ship. So it's very heavily guarded, and DeLorean is like, yeah, that's a bad idea to try and break into there. We're probably going to fail. But Boone is like, yeah, we've got all these guys, and they have their specific talents in order to make this thing go smoothly. Plus, DeLorean needs the payday, so he accepts the job. Now, while on DeLorean's ship, Burr and the others discover Yoda hiding away in his little apartment compartment, and they pick him up. Well, Burr picks him up, and immediately, just like with Amy Sedaris, I felt jealous that I didn't get to pick him up. But then the way Burr was talking about, maybe handing him over, maybe taking him off DeLorean's hands, it all sounded very threatening. It's all very, very subtle threats. So then I just suddenly wanted Burr's character to die immediately, right? Just, okay, airlock him off the ship right now, because no one threatens Yoda. I don't care who you are. So anyway, before things can escalate a little bit more, because during that scene you can see that those 3 don't trust DeLorean for whatever reason. Maybe because of how badass he is. They don't believe he's a badass, so they're kind of trying to test him, to show how much of a badass he is, and he's not falling for it. Even Berg, bumps into him a couple times, kind of doing that gangster shoulder tap thing that a lot of tough guys do. And besides, Clancy Brown is a very large guy, just naturally, so he's a very intimidating person just on his own. So to have him constantly bump into you, intentionally, and you don't hit back, it's kind of like, well, if you hit back, he'll probably hit you back harder. So anyway, before anything can get too out of control on DeLorean's ship, they dock with the prison ship, and this is where the money starts to really be shown on this episode, because the inside of the prison ship, like the hallways, looked so much like classic Star Wars stuff. I mean, it was just it just looked great. It just looked absolutely great. I mean, just like an A+. And so they go on the search for this prisoner, and they get pinned down by about 4 or 5 security droids. Now, DeLorean hates droids, of course, and these droids have them all pinned down, but DeLorean sneaks up from behind them. I don't know what route he took, but he took some route to where he ended up behind all of these droids, and then he takes care of all of them by himself. Just total badass. He's like rolling around on the floor, and he's pulling things to each other, and he's chopping heads off, and he's shooting this one through his flamethrower to this one. I mean, it's just amazing, just by himself, which was just like, he's taking a couple hits too. It's not like he's dodging every shot, but he takes a couple hits. Of course, his Beskar armor, doesn't let him get hurt, but he takes them all down by himself. And you can see on the faces of the others, Burr and Berg and Tian, and Zero stays on the ship. So it's just Berg, Burr, and Tian. And so you can see on their faces, like, okay, well, maybe that's why he's got that reputation across the galaxy. Now, they still underestimated him, but after that display, I was like, yeah, respect. Like, yeah, much respect for sure. So as they're going around, and they encounter actually a living person in the control room. Now, one of the reasons that DeLorean decided to take the job was that they were told there weren't going to be any humans or any living people on the ship. It was supposed to be all just droids, so that no one would get killed. So they encountered this guy in the control room, who I guess was the voice of Anakin Skywalker in one of the Star Wars cartoons. So it was cameos left and right in this episode. And so this guy's panicking, he's like, Anakin panicking. Okay. So he's panicking, that this prison break's about to go down. He's the only one on board. And so he's got this device, which is basically like a life alert thing. But if he hits the button to this life alert, X-Wing fighters will be scrambled and go to the location of the signal and then just bomb the place. So whoever's on board will just get annihilated, right? So a standoff immediately takes place between DeLorean and him, and then Bill Burr's character gets involved and it's like, yeah, we'll kill you if we have to, so don't push that button, right? But then it's like, well, we can't just let him go because he will tell on us. So it's like, well, DeLorean doesn't want the guy to get killed. Bill Burr has no problem killing them. So then those two get into a standoff, and then out of nowhere, the guy gets shot anyway because Tian was just like, hey, you guys are arguing too much. Let's just get out of here. But the guy, of course, panicked and hit the button anyway. So then when he dies, now this life alert gets alerted, activated, I should say. And so the ship's security system starts going off, red lights, flashing everywhere, and then things are beeping. So now there's more of an emergency to get this victim, this prisoner out before, the ship gets bombed. And you can see after the guy gets killed that there's a bit of remorse in DeLorean's reaction. I guess he doesn't want the guy to get killed. He seems to be like a bounty hunter who would prefer to avoid casualties as much as possible. So I really like that about the characters, about his character being revealed in this episode. He does have a code that he sticks to. He's not just, I'll get my money by whichever means I can. He doesn't want to see anyone actually get killed if they don't have to. So clearly he saw that this security guy's death as very unnecessary and probably avoidable. So that's kind of something that I liked about him. So they eventually find this prisoner, and it's Cordova, Ismael Cordova, this Chin guy who ends up being Tian's brother. And so once they rescue him, the 4 of them push DeLorean into his former cell and start making their way towards the exit. And so meanwhile, while they're trying to get out, we go back to the ship, and Zero's flying the plane. Zero's in the driver's seat of DeLorean's ship, and there's this message coming through from Carl Weathers' character. It's very choppy, very reminiscent of Princess Leia's original message in the first Star Wars movie. And so you can't make out what he's trying to say, and Zero trying to make it work. And then we see Yoda standing there behind him, and Zero turns around and Yoda-Lei's gone. And at this point, I thought like the episode was going to take a bit of a horror theme to it, because from that point, everything's flashing red, basically the color of murder in the security ship. And then Zero is going on this sort of chase in trying to track down Yodele, but everywhere he looks, Yodele is just there, or there's nothing there. And it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, maybe it was a ghost, and there's like noises coming from here and from there, but there's no one there. And so that kind of thing was going on between the two scenes. And so DeLorean, back on the ship, is able to escape from the cell, and it goes back to the control room where the guy was killed. And he begins to close doors and separating Burr from the others, from Berg and from Tian and from Chin, right? So they're all being separated. Now, Hellboy meets DeLorean in the control room. They fight for a little bit, and of course, DeLorean is no match for Hellboy. Not at all, right? Just the size is he's outclassed in every way physically. But he is able to get the upper hand eventually, and Hellboy meets his defeat in a very funny way that forces him to like show off his strength. But then the doors close on him in a very hilarious way. I had to watch it like 2 or 3 times because it was just so well done. There's an also really cool scene where he's sneaking up on Bill Burr's character, and because of the flashing lights, the strobe effect is like really cool because you can see him sneaking up from behind, and then it just kind of turns black when he gets close enough to attack him. So DeLorean does catch up with Chin right before Chin is about to get on the ship, and Chin is like, well, you can kill me right here, but you have a code, so you're gonna have to take me alive. Isn't that right? You've got a code. And so DeLorean doesn't do anything. We go back up to the ship, and we see that Zero has finally found Yodele, actually right back where he was in the beginning, in his little apartment thing. And Zero raises a gun to go blast at Yodele, and then Yodele raises its hand to do some force stuff, closes its eyes, raises its hand, and then Zero's neck explodes, and then Yodele looks down at its hand and is like, what? That was another part of the episode that I had to watch 2 or 3 times because Yodele's reaction was just so good. What? I did that? But then of course when you see Zero drop, you see DeLorean is there behind him, and so they head back to Boone's space station or his ship or whatever, and DeLorean hands over the prisoner, Shin, and then collects his bounty, and Boone is kind of like looking for the others to leave the ship, doesn't see anyone. He's like, hey, well, what happened to the others? And DeLorean just says, okay, they got what they deserved. Now the implication there was that he killed them, but considering that he has a code, it was obvious that he did not kill them. So once DeLorean is getting ready to leave, he flies off out of this the little docking bay there, and Boone gives a nod to sort of have this fighter go after him. And then it's when the fighter is getting ready to leave, Boone sees a flashing light coming from Shin's pockets, and he's like, hey, what's that thing? And so Shin pulls this thing out. He's like, oh, it's the life alert. It's beeping. And I was like, yeah, I called it. I knew that was going to happen. But even though I knew it was going to happen, the way it happened was pretty cool. And then as DeLorean is way out, is further out than they could catch him right now. The fighter jet is still coming out of the ground to go chase after him. But then the X-Wing fighters come out of hyperspace. And that's where you see the directors are like talking to each other. And then Boone is like, are those X-Wing fighters? They get blown up. Boone and them get blown up, and DeLorean is like talking to Yodele. Is like, yeah, I told you that was a bad idea, and that's where that episode ended. And I was like, yeah, that was a really great episode, really good episode, really, really awesome. Had a lot of fun with it. I mean, it was just awesome episode all around. So we pick up with episode 7, and we're seeing the message that was coming through in episode 6 that was all grainy and flickering in and out. And it was just a message from Carl Weathers to DeLorean asking him to go back to Navarro, which I believe is the name of the planet that the first episode took place on. I don't remember if it was, but I guess that's what it was called, Navarro. And so it turns out that Werner Herzog's character, the client that originally gave DeLorean the mission to go get Yodele, it turns out that he has made life a living hell for everyone in that town because DeLorean stole Yodele. So then he's like, well, fuck it then. Everyone's going to have to suffer now. And so Weathers in that message is proposing that Mandalorian uses Yodele as bait in order to get close to the client and, take him out to dinner, dinner with the worms, 6 feet underground. murder him is what I'm trying to get at. He wants DeLorean to murder the guy. And by doing that, he'll stop being a problem for the guild and for DeLorean, so that no more bounty hunters go after Yoda. So hearing that, I'm thinking to myself, it's a trap. Exactly. So DeLorean probably thought the same thing, because he went back to the planet where Gina Carano was, where, you know, the kids were playing from before, from episode 5 or 4, I think episode 5. And so he recruits her and is like, hey, I need your help to do this thing. Could you join me and, you know, help me out? She's like, nah, I don't think so. But then he's like, yeah, it's an Imperial guy that I'm going to take out. She's like, okay, sign me up. So I guess she doesn't like the Imperial guys at all. and then she's like, well, who's going to watch over Yoda if we're going to be doing this thing with your boy Carl Weathers? And then so DeLorean is like, well, that's a good idea. So then he goes back to the planet that he found Yoda on, you know, whatever, that first dusty tan rock filled planet. So he goes back to that planet in the first episode where he found Yoda, and he gets the Quill. Ugh, I don't know what that guy's name was. Quill. I think it said Quill. So he asks Quill, hey, will you join me on this thing to go watch Yoda for me? And the guy's like, nah, not really. I'm not serving anyone anymore. And DeLorean's like, well, you know, I kind of need your help, you know. And the dude's like, well, okay, fine. And so while they're talking, the bounty hunter robot that DeLorean had shot in the head and destroyed, basically, in order to rescue Yoda, first, he shows up and is like, hey, you guys want some tea? And DeLorean's like, hey, what the hell's up with this guy? You know, he's a droid, a bounty hunter, he shouldn't be here. And Quill's like, yeah, I reprogrammed him to just be, you know, cool guy with now, so he's great with us now. It's not a big deal anymore. And DeLorean's like, I don't know, he's a droid, he's a bounty hunter. I don't think they ever change it. I don't think they ever change their circuits like that, you know. And Quill's like, no, chill out, man. He's cool. He's fine with us. He's with us now. I'm real good. I'm a real good programmer. So they all get on the ship and they make their way back to Navarro. And while they're on the ship, Carano and DeLorean are having a friendly arm wrestling match. And Yoda sees, you know, DeLorean struggling and automatically assumes, at least that's what I took it to be, that Carano was a foe. And so Yoda starts to force choke her, you know, like Vader did, because he found her lack of Deadpool disturbing. So DeLorean has to break Yoda's concentration, and like Carano can breathe again, and she's like, what the hell just happened? Did he do that to me and all this stuff? And so Quill is saying that, no, he's heard rumors of this sort of thing before, but before that can happen, no further explanation is offered, and they get back to Navarro and meet Carl Weathers. And this cool lava rock planet surface, which I don't remember seeing on episode 1, but maybe it was there. That episode moved so slow and it was so boring. But anyway, so they meet Weathers, and he's got his band of guild members with him, and you know, DeLorean's got Carano and the Quill guy with him. And so he tells DeLorean, yeah, we got to go to the town, and there's only supposed to be about 4 stormtroopers guarding the client at any time, and you know, you'll be able to take them out, no problem. There shouldn't be any difficulties whatsoever. And so they take a break during the night shift, and you know, they don't walk all the way back to the town on that first day. This is the second time that I've actually seen a passage of time seem organic in this show, where they're like, okay, they're moving, and then they have to take a rest, and the sun goes down, and then they have to keep on going. So while the sun goes down and they're in the dark, these pitch black creatures attack them. That's all I could think about when those bird pterodactyl things came out of the night, was just pitch black, because it just reminded me of Pitch Black. I just couldn't think of anything else. It just, good scene, but it just, yeah, that's straight out of Pitch Black. So during this attack on the group, you know, the birds scratch up Carl Weathers' arm and they poison him, and then Yoda, still doing his force manipulation thing, is able to force heal Carl Weathers. And it's like, wow, because I remember in episode 1 and 2, maybe, Yoda kept trying to heal DeLorean, but then, you know, DeLorean would kept pushing him away. So now Quill was like, hey, you know, let him do his thing. And sure enough, Yoda was able to cure Carl Weathers' poison scratch thing, which you can see by everyone's facial reaction. They were like, what the hell is going on with this thing? So the next day, as they're walking towards the town, you know, Weathers shoots the guild guys, and you're like, what the hell? And that's when he tells DeLorean the actual plan was, of course, to kill him and grab Yoda. But after his life was saved, he couldn't see himself doing that. Which I would like, yeah, the guy had a change of heart. It makes sense. You know, you saved my life. I'm not going to try to take you down now. That'd be insane. So they devise a new plan, and DeLorean tells him, hey, okay, so I'm going to go with you as a prisoner. Carano's going to come along, and Quill's going to take the kid back to the ship and do like this ground protocol thing, which makes the ship impenetrable to outside forces. So, okay, they head up to the town, and now there's tons of stormtroopers everywhere, just tons of stormtroopers everywhere, all through the town. And so much so that even Carano makes the observation that says, like, she's like, 4 stormtroopers. And Weathers is like, yeah, 4. Tons of them. It's like hundreds in the town, but only 4 with the client. And that kind of gets played on a little bit, 2 or 3 more times, where she's like 4 stormtroopers. And at one point, Weathers is just like, you know, okay, fine. Okay, it's not 4 stormtroopers. What do you want me to do about it? So they sit down with the client, and, you know, DeLorean is still supposed to be this prisoner. More stormtroopers show up, and that's when the client gets a message from Giancarlo Esposito, another character from Breaking Bad. And Jet also, he's really good in Jet with Carlo Gugino. And so he plays this guy named Moff Gideon, which was a terrible name because as soon as I heard it, all I could think of was Muff Gideon, which is just, it's just so much funnier. Say that name by mistake, Muff Gideon. So after Herzog gets this message from Moff Gideon, the bar gets shot up completely. Herzog gets killed, all the stormtroopers get killed. Only DeLorean, Carano, and Weathers, who have taken cover, they're the only 3 left alive in the bar. And so Giancarlo, he makes this excellent entry on one of those TIE fighter ships, one of those black ones. I think it was black, or really dark gray. He makes this excellent entry, and DeLorean gets on his comms and is like seeking an update on Quill's, you know, whereabouts, or have you made it back to the ship yet? And I guess it was an open channel because the stormtroopers were outside in the town. They heard the whole thing. They heard the whole back and forth between DeLorean and Quill, and they just take off on their space bikes. And I was wondering, like, okay, you take off on your space bike, but where the hell are you going? Do you know where you're going? Like, this is a planet, you know. It's not like DeLorean was like, hey, I see you're at marker 172, you know, eastbound. Have you made it the next 500 yards to the ship yet? No, there's nothing like that going on. So I don't know how these stormtroopers knew where to go in what direction. They just hopped on their bikes and just skirted off. So, but anyway, more stormtroopers show up and surround the bar. And then that's when Esposito lands and steps out of his ship. And he starts, you know, he's like, hey, you know, I need Yoda much more than you guys need him. Because I guess Esposito wanted to start a space restaurant with Yoda called Los Pollos Hermanos en la Galaxia. Because, you see, things went very, very bad with the first restaurant he had, Los Pollos Hermanos. So he really wanted to try again. And so going back and forth with DeLorean and Quill, you know, he keeps asking for a progress report. He doesn't get a response. And that's when we see that the stormtroopers scoop up Yoda off the ground. And then the last shot of the episode is Quill lying flat, motionless, with some smoke rising from his back. And I was like, wow, that is awesome. So DeLorean, Carano, and Weathers are surrounded in this bar, guns pointed at them from every direction. Yoda has been picked up by the stormtroopers. Quill is dead. So it's like, wow, that is awesome. The episode really picked up in the last 10 minutes. And I mean, it was nail biting. I cannot downplay that. It was very, very enjoyable. And I'm glad that the series has turned around so much since episode 3. So I think Esposito is the real villain of the show, I suppose. Now, like I said, he was the villain in Breaking Bad and in Jet. And I think he was the villain also in the Revolution. Or maybe he started out good but then turned bad. Or maybe he started out bad and then turned good. I don't know. I only watched 2 or 3 episodes of that show and I gave up on it. I don't know how long it lasted anyway. And it looks like he might be less of a bad guy in The Boys season 2 on Amazon. I mean, bad guys compared to Homelander anyway. So I'm really happy that the series, picked up the way it did, and I really can't wait to see the finale. So that's all I got for this episode 6 and episode 7 of The Mandalorian. Like and subscribe if you'd like to like and subscribe to things, and I'll see you for the season finale. This is Bobby Hammz signing out. Peace.